In a world full of darkness, there is but one source of light. Take light from the light. And then what? Hide it? Save it for later? We guard the flame and we pass it on to our children, our families, and our friends until the light swallows the darkness. There is one true light, one true faith. We confess every Sunday it is here. So why are we content to let other faiths, or those with no faith, educate the next generation of Orthodox faithful?
We're Orthodox. We have something not only different, but we have something that's true. We have something precious to offer that's different than every other school.
Roman Catholics have their schools, as do Lutherans, Reformed, and Evangelicals. We have the building, but our school stands empty 6 days of the week.
It's a waste. It breaks my heart.
It's a fact not lost on His Grace Bishop Basil as he roams the silent halls of a building that was intended to be filled daily with psalms, prayers, and instruction of children.
This is to be a school. God blessed us to have this facility. He blessed us to have those classrooms. And I think we just ought to step back and let Him do with them what He wants to do with them.
He points to the potential. We have scores of talented teachers. Our numbers are great. Our pockets are deep. And yet, the 261 baptized Orthodox school-age children in Wichita have no Orthodox school to call home.
They're the most precious thing we have. Forget bank accounts, forget buildings. Our children are our most precious gems. And I don't know why anyone would want to entrust them to anybody except others who are like mind in spirit and in belief and morals and ethics. Somebody that you know that you can say amen to everything they're going to teach your children.
Less than 400 miles away shines St. Peter's Orthodox Church on a wooded lot in Fort Worth, Texas. 5 years ago, His Grace challenged this congregation of just over 100 families to build a school. They built this facility from the ground up and hired a headmaster. On a weekday noon hour, 75 children filled the church, chanting the Psalms and praying, just like they do every school day. Orthodox prayers, Orthodox worship. But what may surprise you? 2/3 of these children are not Orthodox.
My elder son said to me the other day, "Mom, we've got to get some prayer beats because I learned this prayer called the Jesus Prayer." And he proceeded to tell me what it meant exactly and how much theology in that little small prayer it had. And he said, and now I say it in my head when I'm not thinking about anything else, and Father Gerald will say it's going to be a default someday. That someday when I'm not doing anything, that's where my brain's going to go, is to the Jesus Prayer. And so that I'm thinking of beautiful things all the time. And to hear a 15-year-old say that was tremendous for me.
A pretty tremendous endorsement coming from a Protestant. In fact, Annette and her husband chose St. Peter's over a Protestant classical school.
One year we went to a small classical school that had a Reformed Presbyterian type of background, and we enjoyed it. It was fine, but I have to say it is night and day, and if I had the choice today, I would again choose to go to an Orthodox Classical School. I think Orthodoxy understands classical.
Headmaster Brian Smith says there's a good reason for that.
Classical education came from the Orthodox world.
All right, guys, we are going to do a narration activity today with the Dutch Revolt.
A classical education shuns pop culture for the permanent.
You all have your papers on your desk.
Classical students don't just read books about Plato or Aristotle, they actually read the original text.
That comes a little bit later. Blake.
Students in classical schools study the great conversation throughout time, one that Orthodoxy participates in. Thus, classical education and Orthodoxy go hand in hand.
We will not believe something else 5 or 10 years from now. We say these things now because this is what we've received from the church historically. You can trust we're going to have this same stand down the road. for us, the faith is an anchor.
Si hodie est felix, aqueas cantare vis, si hodie est felix, manus prare.
Since the anchor of many modern languages is Latin, classical students begin studying Latin in the first grade.
Uge!
Optime.
Good morning.
Then they move down the hallway and onto their Greek studies.
Bene. All right. So Latin was bene this morning.
That's right, 2 languages, both beginning not in high school, but in first grade.
Mater imon.
O inti suguranis, adiastito to onomasu, el feto e basiliasu.
Just in case your Greek isn't as good as a first grader's, that's the Lord's Prayer they're reciting. They're not just speaking Greek, they're learning to read and write
It makes
it.
a sound like this. Psst. So it's our secret sound, right? Psst.
By high school, they can read, write, and fluently speak or sing it.
Here is your dialysis tubing, and you're going to make a little tube with that. So
A focus on faith and language doesn't detract from math and science. Teacher Sandy Mitchell says even science is spiritual.
You have to get quiet. You have to meditate on what is being expressed. And then ultimately, you're going to derive a truth. And if you can do that, they can sit in anybody's classroom, in any college class, and be successful.
In fact, St. Peter's students are sitting in college classrooms now.
We've already had 2 students who graduated as seniors, applied to 4 different colleges, got into all of them, got scholarship offers. In fact, one of the students had a school write back to him and increase their scholarship offer to him when they saw some of his scores that came in.
The hope is when they do go to college and out into the world, they take the faith with them.
We're not just trying to give children an intellectual basis for taking on the world, but a spiritual basis, something that fills their hearts and then lets them look out in the world, not just filling their minds with facts.
Oh, rejoice, bride unwedded.
But it's a wonderful thing for your child to come home singing a hymn to the Theotokos, and you know that she's in an environment that's encouraging her spiritual growth as well as her educational growth.
Jeannie Potoff has witnessed the academic and spiritual growth of her daughter. She homeschooled Mary for kindergarten, but decided to send her to St. Peter's for first grade.
She's happy, and that makes us happy.
7-year-old Mary has a bounce in her step and an answer for everything. What do you like about it?
Well, it's just worshiping God, and God is very important
Why is God important?
because He laid down His life for us.
And so do you think it's important just to do that at church, or do you think it's important to think about that every day?
I think it's important to think about that every day.
And thanks to St. Peter's, she does think about that every day. In Wichita, we are at crossroads. We have a choice to make.
The society, I think, is making us do that. It's challenging us to do that. Either to go with the flow, which is a very bad place to go these days. And I think the society would be very happy for us just to go with the flow. That's the idea. It's our own conscience that demands that we're not going to go with the flow. And if you want to go with the flow, fine. Just step out of the way and let us who don't want to go with the flow do what we know we have to do.
After all, as Orthodox parents, we want our children to be prepared for college, successful careers, and for eternity.
Be not affrighted, ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was...
This is our children. And it's their eternal salvation. As I said, a church school just doesn't form their mind, it helps to form their soul. This will impact them for eternity, not just their earthly life. It's for eternity.